Okay, so today we will be talking about absolute values. So, first off, how many of you guys know anything about absolute values, like at all? Okay, I'm just gonna assume that if nobody answers, then nobody knows anything about absolute values, and then I'll start teaching. All right, yeah, that's good, nice. So, yeah, what he just said, it's always positive, right, right. Okay, so the main concept between absolute value is that it's a distance. So distances can never be negative, right? Like you can't go negative 5 feet. You always have to go positive 5 feet. So it's just right. Distance a number is away from zero. So like -3, the distance from -3 to 0 is 3 units. So it's always going to be positive. So that's like one of the concepts, but it gets a lot harder from that. Like you can ease like the first part is also really always really easy. It's like -2. If you take the absolute value, that equals 2, right? It just makes it positive, really simple. And if you take the absolute value of 3, since it's already positive, no change, still equal to 3. But that's only with like single numbers, constants. But once you get into like equations, it actually gets a little bit harder. So, um, for example, let's say what is the value of -2 absolute value plus 2? So what does that equal? Right, should be relatively simple. It's just +2 plus 2 equals 4. And yeah, okay. So here are some properties that help you solve this. So absolute value of x. So once you bring in variables, you can have three different cases. So first off, the absolute value of x can equal 0 because if 0, absolute value of 0 is equal to 0. It can equal x. So that's assuming that x is greater than 0, assuming that x is positive. So let's say x is 3. It's positive, so it just equals itself, which is x. Let's say if x was negative, if x is less than 0, so let's say -3, then it equals negative whatever this is inside, so it's just negative of -3, which is +3, right? So that's the three different main cases. And then like if you don't include 0, that works too. You can write it as this too, it doesn't really matter. And then if you were solving two absolute values equal to each other, you have just two cases. They can either be equal to each other and the absolute value doesn't actually matter, or it can be x is equal to -y. So one of them is going to be negative. So there's that. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. The absolute value of x is always going to be greater than or equal to 0. So as you guys told me a while ago, it's going to be positive, right? And equality holds, so it's only going to be equal if x is equal to 0. You guys know this. Okay, this is a good case. The absolute value of x minus y is equal to the absolute value of y minus x. So why is that true? So let's say absolute value of x minus y. This, you can take the negative out, so it's the absolute value of negative y minus x, right? And then whenever something is negative inside an absolute value, it's also the same as positive inside the absolute value. So anyway, it's okay if you don't get that. That's just like a justification. So just good to memorize these. Notes will be posted online, I think, so you can go back and look at these and do your best to memorize them. Okay. Okay, so that when it comes to solving absolute values, it's always good to make it into two cases. So first case would be ignore the absolute value and just write it out and then solve it. Second case would be to take out the absolute value but make one of the equations negative. You can also write it as negative fx equals gx, right? So two cases. First case is ignore absolute value, solve it, see what you get. Second case is take out the absolute value and make either the left side or the right side negative. It really doesn't matter which side you make negative. Okay, proof. We don't need to use a proof. Okay. Simplify. 3 minus pi. See if you guys can do this. And if you recall, pi is equal to 3.1415. I don't remember the rest though. So see if you can simplify this and write it in terms of pi, which means there should be a pi in your answer. Okay. Um, you guys are all, you have the right answer, but not what I'm asking for. I think this is kind of the closest to what I'm asking for. So I said simplify this in terms of pi. Do you guys know? So in terms of pi. So it's good that you gave me a decimal, but not what I'm asking, not what the question asks for. Right. Right. So as you can see, you know the inside's going to be negative because 3 is less than pi. So then since you have the absolute value, if we go back to our cases, right, if we go back to our cases, we see if x equals 0, so this inside is equal to 0, then the absolute value of the inside is going to equal to negative whatever is in the inside. So negative 3 pi, which is equal to pi minus 3. So do you guys get the concept here? It's like if the inside is less than 0, then once you take the absolute value of it, it's negative whatever's on the inside. Since it's negative, negative becomes positive. So right here, we know this is going to be negative. We take the absolute value, so we multiply it by -1, and then we get pi minus 3. Okay, right. So since pi is greater than 3, this becomes this, or this, or this, etc. Okay, this one is slightly harder. Okay. Before you guys try to solve this one, just like uh, a quick little theorem for you guys to know. If you take any number and you square it, and then you take the square root of that, this is always going to equal the absolute value of the number. Because once you square it, it becomes positive, and then when you take the square root, it becomes whatever the number is itself. So like the square root should cancel out, but it always makes it positive because it's a square. So that's just like a little thing. So it should help you solve this example right here. So give a stab at this, and if you don't get it, it's okay. I'll explain it. Okay, the answer should actually be, nice job to this guy who got it. I think you two might have made some careless mistakes, but I'll explain it, so it's okay. Nice job. Okay, so like I said, once you take the square root of a square, it becomes absolute value. So I'll just rewrite this a little bit. So it becomes the absolute value of x minus the absolute value of x minus 1, absolute value, absolute value. So it's like an absolute value inside of an absolute value. Okay, so we can work from the inside out. So let's work from the inside first. So let's just copy down this part. And then let's work on this. Minus, excuse me. Yeah, correct answer is B. Nice. Excuse me. So it says if x is less than 0. If x is going to be less than 0, then something negative minus 1 is still going to be negative. So when you take the absolute value of it, we have to turn this into negative parentheses x minus 1. Why? Because you know the inside is going to be negative. It's going to be like -6 or some negative, random negative number. And then when you take the absolute value of it, you multiply this by a negative to make it +6. So in that same case, we don't know what x is, but we can still multiply it by -1 to make it positive. So we just made this positive, and then we can continue drawing this. And then we can kind of simplify into these two negatives cancel out and turn into positive, so we can go x plus x minus 1, absolute value. So this comes out to be 2x minus 1. But you're not done there because you still have another absolute value. And then we go back and we see x is less than 0, so x is negative. 2x is going to be negative. 2x minus 1 is still going to be negative. So you know this inside is also going to be negative. So if it's negative absolute value around, it's going to have to be like this. Because since this value is going to be like a negative number, let's say like it's -8. When you take the absolute value, like theoretically if it was -8, since you know it's negative, just a random negative number, since you take the absolute value of it, you multiply this by a -1. And then see, I multiplied this by -1 down here, and then you get your answer equals 1 minus 2x, which is B. So again, first I changed the square root of the square into absolute value, and then I justified that the inside is going to be negative, so I have to multiply that by -1. And then these two negatives right here cancel out with each other since it's multiplication. And then so it's just x plus x minus 1, absolute value of 2x minus 1. And then since this is also going to be negative because x is less than 0, take the negative of that, you get your answer 1 minus 2x. So it's okay if it's a little bit complicated, because sometimes I have to like sit there and think about it for a while as well. By property 5, we also have that. Since x is negative, 1 minus x is positive, blah, onwards. Okay. Okay, let's try this one. Similar concept. If x is less than -2, then absolute value of 1 minus absolute value of 1 plus x equals what? So again, I'd advise you to work from the inside and out to the outside. Okay. Um, I'll give you guys a hint, and then I'll let you guys continue solving it. Oh, did I? Okay, I'll give you guys a hint first. Okay. So, like I said, you should try working from the inside out. So let's first just write the equation down. 1 minus, well, it's not really an equation. 1 plus x, right? A. Is it A? No, good try. Almost. Very close. Okay. I think you forgot the last step, but it's okay. I'll give you a hint first. So 1 minus absolute value of this, right? So I said work from the inside out. It says x is less than negative 2. So you have that. So let's work on the inside first. Ignore everything else. So 1 minus, sorry, oops. Let me erase that real quick. Okay, so it's the absolute value of 1 minus, and then whatever this expression is right here. We're changing parentheses. Okay, so we'll first work on the absolute value of 1 plus x, right? So it says x is less than negative 2. So if x is less than negative 2, this is going to be a negative number. Right? Do you guys get that this is going to be a negative? The inside is going to be a negative number. So like let's take example. Let's say x was negative 3. Then the inside would equal the absolute value of negative 2. Right? So that's a negative number. But it's not negative 3. That's just like an explanation. Okay. So yeah, it's actually B. Nice job. So if this is going to be a negative number, if you take the absolute value of a negative number, you have to multiply it by negative 1. Because like I said, if it was going to be if it was negative 3, this would equal the absolute value of negative 2. And then to remove the absolute value, you have to multiply it by negative 1 since it's negative to equal 2. So to remove the absolute value, I multiply this whole thing by negative 1. So it's negative 1 minus x, parentheses. And then continue writing this down. And then now that you know this, see if you can solve this. Now that I've given you a hint. This is what it looks like now. It looks like the absolute value of 1 minus parentheses negative 1 minus x parentheses. So see if you can solve it from here. Okay, everybody's getting B. I'm not sure if that's because I said B was the right answer, you guys. So I'm just gonna trust that you guys did get B, but I'll still explain it. So when you write it out, it's gonna be the absolute value. So I'm just gonna simplify what's on the inside first. So it's like 1 plus 1 plus x, right? So basically, I just took the parentheses away. I multiplied the negatives in. So this is going to be equal to the absolute value of x plus 2. Okay, so you're not actually done here because we see that x is less than negative 2. And since it's less than negative 2, when you add it to positive 2, it's going to still be negative. Okay, nice. I'm glad. That makes me really happy, actually, when people get... Okay, anyway, so when you have a negative number on the inside, and then you take the absolute value, you have to multiply that negative number by negative 1 to turn it into a positive number, because you always have to have a positive number after you finish absolute valuing it. So then multiply by negative 1, so negative x minus 2. So if you guys don't get it, just tell me, and then I'll just re-explain it. It's all good. Absolute value is like a really hard concept to grasp at first, because like we're not used to changing negatives and positives back and forth. Great lesson. Oh, thanks. I don't think we're done yet. We still have like 40 minutes. Okay. Okay. Let's try example number 4. Find all the values of a plus b if absolute value of a equals 1 and absolute value of b equals 2. Okay, right. Nice. Oh, nice. Uh, um, I'm not sure where the zeros are coming from, but other than that, it looks good. But zero is actually not an answer. They're only four. So I'll explain it really quickly. Okay, so there are basically four cases here, two for A and two for B. So A can from like you know that A can either equal -1. Oh right, delete zero. Nice, good catch. Okay, excuse me. If A is equal to absolute value of A equals to 1. A can either be -1 or 1, and then the absolute value of B is equal to 2. B can either equal 2 or -2. So there's four cases. First case is A equals -1, B equals 2. Second case is A equals -1, B equals -2. Third case is A equals 1, B equals 2, and then the last case is A equals +1, B equals -2. And then basically, these are your four main cases. So like they're so little cases, it's like easier to list them out and then just like add them up together. So add this one up together, that equals 1, -3, 3, and then -1. So just list out what A and B can be and then do the cases and then four answers. So you have to be careful because it asks for all values and not just one. Okay. Okay. This one is slightly harder because you have three different things you have to peel out. So I'll give you guys a little longer and see if you can get it. So remember, if the absolute value of x is equal to -x if x is less than 0. So just remember this. And it works if x is like an expression as well. So like if the inside is a plus 3, and then you know that this is going to be negative. So if a plus 3 is less than 0, then this is going to equal -a minus 3. If you know that a plus 3 is going to be less than 0. So these two should help you solve this problem. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to solve this one. So right, another hint, work from the inside out. So first off, start with the absolute value of x minus 2, and then work from there. And like if something's positive inside an absolute value, you can just ignore the absolute value and keep going. Wait, nice job to you three down there. 2x plus, 2 plus is actually the correct answer. And right, nice job to you too. I'll explain it really briefly since most people got it. So like I said, we start from the inside, so just copy down the outside, just you can disregard. And then this is what we need, the inside. So first off, it's the absolute value of x minus 2 is on the inside, so we'll start with it. And it says if x is less than negative 1, so we know that this inside is going to be negative. Since x is less than negative 1, so x is going to be a negative number. Minus 2, so it's still going to be a negative number. So since x minus 2 is less than 0, we can write this as the negative x minus 2, right? Which is equal to 2 minus x. So I just kind of simplify. So then we can replace this with 2 minus x. So parentheses 2 minus x, parentheses, and then end it with the absolute value. So this is what we have now. We'll delete that because we already justified. Oops. Okay. And then we continue to simplify. So minus 2, and then 2 minus 2 plus x, and then absolute value. And then this continues to simplify to 2 minus the absolute value of x. And then now we work with the absolute value of x. So it says if x is less than negative 1. So ignore everything else, and all we're looking at is the absolute value of x at the moment. So if x is less than negative 1, so x is going to be less than 0, because if it's less than negative 1, it's going to be less than 0. Then, so we can write this as negative x from one of our theorems justified above. So that it's like its carbon copy is the exact same thing. And then we can plug that in for absolute value of x. So we get 2 minus negative x, which is equal to 2 plus x. So again, we started from the inside, and then we changed the absolute value of x minus 2 into 2 minus x, and then we simplified, and then we changed the absolute value of x into negative x, and then we continue to simplify. So it's kind of like a three-part job. Okay. I don't exactly like this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. Okay, let's try this one. This has like a trick to it, so if you don't know the trick, it's going to be like a little hard to think of. But if you do know the trick, or if you can just like reason through this, it's actually really easy problem to solve. So I'll let you guys try it. So it's evaluate a squared minus 2ab if the absolute value of a minus 2 plus the absolute value of 3 plus b equals 0. Okay. So like once I tell you what it is, it's gonna be just like, oh wow, that's a little bit easier than I thought it would be initially. So I don't know what just happened. Okay. So the thing is, if 16, let me see. I actually don't know. Oh, nice. It is 16. Good job. Oh, nice. Good, good. I think you saw through what the problem is. Okay, so it's the absolute value of something plus the absolute value of something is going to equal 0. So we know that if you take the absolute value of anything, it's going to be greater than or equal to 0. So the absolute value of anything is going to be greater than or equal to 0. So we have two absolute values added together, and each of them are going to be, both of them are going to be greater than or equal to 0. And then when we add them together, they're going to equal 0. So let's say if this was greater than 0, like positive 1, then this would have to be negative 1 to make it 0. But since they both have to be greater than or equal to 0, and since they equal 0, they both are going to have to equal 0, right? So both absolute value of a minus 2 greater than or equal to 0 and absolute value of 3 plus b it has to be greater than or equal to 0. So since they're both greater than or equal to 0 and they add up to 0, they're both going to have to be 0. Because let's say if a minus 2 absolute value was like 3, then the absolute value of 3 plus b would have to equal negative 3, and that's never going to happen. So they both have to be equal to 0. So a must equal 2, and then b must equal negative 3. And then you just plug that in, and you should get 16 in the end. So like now that you know this is how if like two absolute values sum to equal to 0, I don't think like it'd be like the next problem you'd see similar to this one. It'd be really easy to solve, right? So it's just like you know that they have to be greater than or equal to 0, and they sum to equal 0, and they both are greater than or equal to 0, so they both have to be 0. So I think this was kind of like a neat problem. I really like problems like this. So since they both are greater than or equal to 0, they both must equal 0, and then you plug it in and solve it. Yeah, let's try this one. This is actually from Math Counts. What is the sum of all values of x for which the absolute value of x minus 3 plus the absolute value of 3 minus x minus 1 equals 3? So there's actually the problem up here if you can't see it, and it's the sum of all values of x. Okay, just like as a little hint, I'm going to scroll up and okay. Theorem number 5 should be really helpful for this one, for this particular problem actually. So don't overthink it and try to use number 5 to help you solve this. Okay. Hmm. Right. Nice job to you too. That's actually correct. Don't forget to sum them up though. So good catch on the not negatives. And you have to sum them up. So it should equal 6 in the end, right? Okay, I'll explain it and it'll be okay. So first off, uh, you continue writing that. So I don't like this -1 here, so I'm just going to move it to the other side because it like throws me off. So f equals 4. Okay, so then we use this theorem right here. If the absolute value of x minus y is equal to the absolute value of y minus x, why? Because like you can multiply by -1 on the inside and it doesn't matter when it comes out. So this can be written as, we're going to continue writing this with no change. And then, however, this one, instead of 3 minus x, I'm going to do x minus 3. And this equals 4. And since these are the same things, we can just put them together. 2x minus 3 equals 4. So the absolute value of x minus 3 is equal to 2. And then you just solve that, and you get solutions 1 and 5. Because you first ignore the absolute values, and then 3 moves over, it's 5, and then you make it -2, and then 3 moves over equals 1. Okay. So again, this one, the like catch to this problem is you just switch this to negative to x minus 3, and then they're the same things. So you go from there. Okay. Okay. So let's try this problem. Try it yourself. So instead of using variables now, these are just all integers. Right, nice. The correct answer is 0. Good job to everybody down here who got it. Um, so just work with the absolute value on the inside, right? Nice, 0. Work on the absolute value on the inside first. So plus absolute value. So that's just -4. And then that's -2. So it's like parentheses, negative, that's still that. So then that's now -2, and then absolute value of -4 is +4, -2, 0. Okay, let's try this one. If a is less than b, what is the value of absolute value of a minus b plus a plus b? Right, nice job to the three who got it down there. The answer is 2B. Uh, so A is less than B, so we know that A minus B is going to be less than 0 because A is smaller than B, so this is always going to be 0. So since it's 0 and you take the absolute value of it, it's just negative A plus B. We'll multiply by negative 1, and then plus A plus B. And the A's cancel out, and you get 2B. Okay. So this should be an easy one, so let's try number 3. Simplify it. Negative 3 squared plus 4. Huh. Actually, I think, Okay, well, Robert was the only one who actually got it this time. I don't, I don't know. I think maybe after doing all the hard problems and we come back to such like a simple problem, you just like, it gets a lot harder. It's not 13. Okay, I'll explain it. So, right, it's 5. If Since there's no parentheses around, if you took this right here and squared it, that would equal 9. But if you take this right here, this equals negative 9. Since there's no parentheses, this square can't change this negative number. So again, if you had negative 3 parentheses squared, that would equal positive 9. But there's no parentheses here, so negative 3 squared equals negative 9. And since there's no integers, you're only going to have one answer. It's going to be like, so it's just negative 9 plus 4 absolute value. And then that would equal negative 5 absolute value. And that would equal 5. Right. Okay. Let's try number 4. You guys can redeem yourselves through this problem. Given that x is less than 5, rewrite 5x minus absolute value of x minus 5 without using the absolute value sign. Right. Nice job. I think everybody got it in the end. It's 6x minus 5, so I don't think I'll explain this one. I'll just, yeah, there's no explanation. Okay. Find all the values of n for which the following is true. N absolute value of n plus 3 is equal to 8. Right, nice job, guys. It is 5 and negative 11. Uh, so you just, two equations, one's negative, one positive, solve the equations. Yeah, 5 and negative 11. Or you can think of it logically and just be like, negative 11 plus 3 is negative 8, absolute value is 8. Okay. Anyway, the problems after this all get really repetitive, so if you want to do them more practice, I will post them on the forum. But I think we're going to end class a little bit early today. So have a good week, rest of the week, and I think I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys. Thanks.